Hi, and welcome to Reality Check. I'm your host, Lou Meyer, and even though this looks like last week's setting, it's not, but my guest again is Kathy Irving. Kathy, thanks for being back on.
Hi, Lou. Thanks for having me back.
This is wonderful. Now, please ignore the music that you're hearing over my voice, and let me mention to you, before I get started with Kathy, about her very interesting idea for affordable housing, that please, 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 pay attention to this Idaho-Maryland mine deal that they're trying to push through here. We're all going to suffer from this. It's a hideous thing. I'm not going to go into it because I only got a half an hour, but please pay attention to this. And any of you couch potatoes out there who don't think this is the issue you should be involved in, you're the people that should be involved in this. This is going to affect everybody here, and it's hideous, and I'm not going to go into all of it right now. But the next time you see something in the paper about public commentary welcome, you better go there and check it out, because this is a serious, serious thing that's going to happen in our community if we're not careful. So thanks. Kathy, thanks again for coming back on. I'm so happy to have you. Last week we discussed the Seed of Life garden that you started, various ideas about creating something larger. So let's move on with that. Affordable community. What did you have in mind?
Well, thank you for bringing up the mine. I appreciate that. But
Great.
Also, basically our county is facing a crossroads. We're right at the point in time at which we're going to choose whether we're going to have a vital economic base that creates really a sustainable community where we continue to have healthy diversity of ages and a wide range of workforce, really, so that you have a large workforce in addition to business people and business owners and wealthy retired people. But at the moment, the amount of increase in the property value is so extreme, and the rate of people coming into the community and buying a second home or a third home to serve as a rental for them to accumulate more wealth, that whole process is it's right at a crossroads where we either have to create an affordable housing, meet the need for affordable housing to keep our workforce here in Nevada County. We either need to do that, or we have to agree that we're going to be a retirement bedroom community. Which
let me just mention this. Before we moved here many years ago, I lived in Mill Valley. And in Mill Valley, they were going through the same issue. Property values were skyrocketing.
Right.
The police department, the fire department, the people that worked in the stores, nobody lived in our community at all. The fire department, police department guys, they lived up in Petaluma before prices skyrocketed up there, or they lived in Vallejo. So if there were a crisis in the community, those people would not be there. So your entire support group disappears if you can't afford to keep them living in your community. So
that's right.
That's an issue that's confronting us right now. My house, I bought my house like 5 years ago. It's doubled in price or better already. So it's already unaffordable for me. I couldn't even move here and buy my own house. So these are the kinds of things we're dealing with. Rental prices are mortgage rate prices. So, those of us who are lucky enough to be here and have a place to live, that's great. But in order to sustain the community, we need to have affordable housing, and it has to be sensibly and environmentally designed. And that's why I've asked Kathy to be here, because she has some fabulous ideas about how we can do that.
I just want to make one more point, Lou, just about the...
No!
It's so critical, really, because, first of all, the amount of money that a school receives depends on the child being in their seat every day. It's about attendance. And so if a student's parents can't afford to buy a house and they're in a rental situation, and there's less stability in the home, there's a greater likelihood that the child isn't in their seat. So even if they're renting, there's less of a likelihood of the presence of the students in the schools than if they're owning. And so when you ask the leaders of the school system, are our schools in danger, it comes down to the affordable housing issue. It really, really does. the hospitals, it comes down to the affordable housing issue, the economic development. And I said this last week, but I just want to articulate again that it's not only your own personal safety, but it is really the well-being of an entire community of people, thousands and thousands of people. So it's not just, does this serve my own interests most fully, but does it serve us all so that we can all have a healthy community to live in?
You know, some of the one of the other things that's interesting about your designs, and you know, and also, you know, who might be interested in looking at this is Phil Carville, who's doing the Loma Rica
They just called
project.
me today, actually.
All of the things that Kathy has designed here involve foot traffic and bicycling and being able to work in the same area that you live, so that we don't have a lot of traffic involved in having this growth or having these buildings. And now, what was the thing you were saying in the last show? You were talking about how the hospital could own the land and then put these affordable housing units there, and people could buy the house.
Yeah, it's there's some of the ideas that the county itself is already working with. The notion that you could have a business, for instance, build workforce housing on property that they continued to own, so that you were only selling the business or the building, excuse me, instead of selling the land. What that does is immediately takes a huge chunk off the price of the house, because
Absolutely.
it's just the building. And the other thing that it does is it gives businesses a little bit of control over keeping the houses affordable, so that when you resell the house, that you're not automatically in a much higher price bracket, that there's a way of that if an employee owned the house, then you would sell it only to another employee that was coming in on the ground level, so that you could create policy that would support keeping an affordable housing infrastructure affordable throughout time. That's really important.
Well, yeah, and again, you would have the workforce very close to their jobs, so there wouldn't be the need to go driving somewhere.
Exactly.
That would keep their cost of living down a little bit, because, well, first of all, and it would help them to establish credit as a homeowner, since you would in effect be owning a
Right.
home. And so so it wouldn't. The only thing you wouldn't be receiving out of that is a huge surprise extra money at the end when you want to sell your home, similar to the
Right.
Habitat for Humanity project
Right,
out there.
similar to that.
49. So, well, let's talk about the design of this. You know, we have
Okay.
a really good psychedelic picture that Kathy's drawn here of the modular units in that. Let's talk once again about. So, tell me what we're looking at here.
Okay, so we're focused on the lower picture. There we are, zoomed in. The center,
North is to your upper left corner.
okay, this here is north, the three slightly darker colored units. Below are three southern units. So I'm calling this south, this north. Then we have northeast and southeast, and we have northwest and southwest.
Okay.
So that's the orientation. The road is over here on the left, and what ideally we would have is that not only would the community center in the that is the center of the whole unit, not only would it have micro businesses that were in existence to serve the needs of the people that lived here, but you also create a place where the individuals that live in these little in the smaller units can sell things that they have made and can create micro industries right there at home. So you could have a single mom living in this unit with a child, and she could be making pastries at the certified kitchen here and selling them at the cafe, so that she would never really have to leave the house except for materials.
Can we just clarify now? All right, in your pictures there, you know, we're looking at petal-shaped areas and round-shaped areas. What Kathy's designed here is something that is not your basic stick frame, square, 90-degree angle building. And so this would lend itself more towards affordable housing structure. What do you call it? Alternative building practices. Sorry.
Right.
Alternative building practices. I mean, you might be able to construct some of these out of straw bale or rammed earth, or.
I think they'd be very conducive for that, especially if you were to really which I only did this drawing a couple of weeks ago, so it's very, very new, even the thinking of how you would integrate it into a whole community plan. But I was thinking each of these are gardens, so you could do a major excavation and use the clay as part of to make rammed earth floors, for instance, for these buildings, and then you could put French drains in underneath the pathways that were filled with gravel so that you created an entire water catchment system as you were building your units.
Boy, it just gets better.
The other interesting thing is that if you look closely, there is a very linear line that runs through the pattern. You kind of have a single line, and then you have one that's the garden plus really 4 units. So you could be building in a linear fashion as you were doing your installations, and still come out with this circular thing. You wouldn't have to completely change your thinking of how you do development and construction in order to install such a curvilinear design.
And each one of those circles itself could be a contained area. So if a company or a hospital or whatever didn't need such a large project, but needed to have a certain amount of modular homes or a certain bunch of housing for people, they could take one of those circles and have it
one
be
like this.
Yeah, and have it be residences and a little center for people to go to, in the gardens, and an entertainment facility or whatever.
Or the other thing I was thinking is, if with the 2-story buildings, you really could have a living space upstairs and a workshop or
live workspace, like the warehouses in San Francisco.
Exactly, and a workspace downstairs. And you would have a way that people could drive right up to the workspace of 3 units. So you could have workspaces on this side and living spaces on this side, and this would be available to the public for retail. It's a lot of options.
You certainly offer a lot of ways to go on that. You mentioned to me that your dad is going to be using your design. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? I know it's blowing your own horn, but this is really cool.
Well, Lou, the whole thing, from the conception of the idea, it really is a stretch for me to come on public television and say I talked to nature spirits and devas, which if you saw the show last week, you'll know that the origin moment of this design coming to me was a moment of asking for a higher intelligence to help me. But the installation at the jail, the coincidences involved in getting on the committee at the school system, they've all had that amazing combination of serendipity and a little bit of unexpected je ne sais quoi, where things just fall naturally into place.
Don't you just
with enough consistency where I have been freed of all doubt that this is something that will contribute to the well-being and the quality of life of people on the planet. So my father is a pilot for one of the royal families of the United Arab Emirates. And he became involved in a foundation called Make-A-Wish. We have that here in the United States too, where you take terminally ill people and you give them their final wish. So he was doing this in Abu Dhabi, and when the earthquake in Pakistan struck. Right now, tonight, there are 2 million people in the snow with no housing whatsoever, no fire and no blankets. They're going to just die and die and die if people don't help them. That's the situation we're in, and it's not going to go away. So he has been, through a series of coincidences, put in charge of creating a factory to build hygiene kits, which basically contain 5 bars of soap, I think, and 5 pounds of laundry detergent, I believe, and the basics that you would need. So they are building a factory in Abu Dhabi as we speak, to provide this aspect of it. Another aspect of it are the tents that people are housing in and that they're creating schools in and hospitals in. So they're putting in tent cities for thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know when the last time you ever pulled together 1 million bottle caps was, so that you could conceptualize how many is 1 million people, how many is 2 million cold people, and it's a lot of cold people.
We have about 12,000 people in our county,
Yes.
just as an idea.
Yes,
Falls
only.
far short of 1 million.
And about 200 homeless people in our county also. Anyway, so what he did, well, my dad calls me on my birthday, it was this weekend, and he says, I'm building these tent cities, and UNICEF has a school in a tent, and it's $3,850, and it has everything in one tent to educate 80 children for 1 year. So it's a kit basically that you can sponsor the UNICEF and for these $3,850, and they build one of these schools. They also have hospitals in a tent. Well, so I said, well, Dad, I just threw my Seed of Life Garden project into a workforce housing unit because that's what is part of what we really need in our county, and I'm wondering if maybe you could put a tent city in this same pattern. Take the gardens out, put a fire pit in the middle so that you create a sense of community so that people aren't just in a desperate situation that's going to be desperate next year and it's going to be desperate and bleak the following year. You have to create a structure that fosters economic growth and community. So he says, well, email it to me. And I said, well, I've just got this poster. And anyway, so I mailed it to him, and he should get it on Thursday. And he wanted me also to really articulate, if I had any access to the media, to articulate that World Vision has agreed to provide all the doctors for these tent schools and to educate an equal number of boys and girls. Generally, that would really be an issue, that only the boys were getting educated, but in these circumstances, the women will too, the girls will too. So the idea that this pattern could be used by relief organizations to organize their refugee cities that they're building. We're building them here in the United States for the refugees from New Orleans. You've seen the footage of those trailer park FEMA camps. It's just horrible. And then I saw footage of trailer park camps from disasters that happened several years ago, and there was a woman saying, if you don't hear a gunshot in a night, you've done great. And
wow. And
that was her attitude. Anyway, so to take these trailer park cities and instead of putting them in a grid that creates absolutely no personal space, no privacy, and no sense of community, if you could arrange them instead in this circular pattern, you could have a place where they could sing songs and tell stories and watch the kids together, and you wouldn't have a situation like was in the Superdome where people were preying on other people, or the Astrodome. It was a terrible situation. It's like rounding up the wagons is more like this, where you have a way that you can protect each other. I think it's important.
It is important, and if this works with your dad's project, it'll work at any, well, as you mentioned, it will work in New Orleans or any other international disaster.
Right.
And it could change the way things like this are done.
It could, if the world's ready for major changes, which maybe it is.
Well, I certainly hope so. So you've only just drawn this like a week or so ago.
Right.
The project you've at least are on the boards of a couple of different groups that may be able to actually implement something like this. What if somebody wanted to get involved or wanted to help you do this, or had some input? Are you willing to accept input from other folks?
I would love to have input. I mean, I am a gardener. I'm not even a landscaper. I'm a gardener. My life is very, very quiet and simple. My grandma's been in a wheelchair for several years. I do a lot of care with her, and any help that this community is so vivacious and so talented and so brilliant. Any way that we could come together and use patterns in order to reorganize, restructure the way we address problems, I think we have so many solutions laying dormant in the patterns. I mean, look at this flower right here. You know, it's got this perfect geometry, this perfect symmetry. It's been practicing reproducing for millions of years. It's good at it. You know, if we want to rearrange things based on organic patterns, we've got a lot we can work with, and a lot of teachers. Every flower is then a teacher. So in my mind, it comes down to that. It comes down to, if we're going to address problems that involve millions of people and huge ecosystems and enormous amounts of water, we need to organize ourselves and use the best teachers that we have on the planet, model our behavior based on what actually works, because what we're doing now is a formula for disaster. Anywhere you look, you get evidence again and again and again of how much is dying, and how many children are dying, how many people are starving to death. It goes on and on.
Environment being destroyed. Well, so locally, we could start with a small one of these projects and see how it works. It looks to me as if you would need, well, the homes are in unusual shape. So you'd probably need, what do we say, furniture, windows, those sort of ideas for designs for those that would fit into this kind of a pattern. Mm-hmm. You know, I had Fred Stoner on my show a while ago. He's an architect, works at the Alternative Building Center, and they're coming up with some phenomenal alternative building products, like shredded blue jeans that are, you know, not like fiberglass, that can be effectively used as an insulation. Mm-hmm. And they have SIF, structurally integrated panels, which are foam sandwiched between oriented strand board. Really strong. You don't need studs. You don't need to use as much wood, and the labor costs will be less for building. So stuff like that, straw bales. What other kinds of things could people submit to you? How do you envision this working?
Well, the first thing is that I think that people could really use this Seed of Life garden pattern and get their churches involved in creating them, and start creating the base for a sustainable community right here at home, so that the rehabs have these, the mental health has it, the schools have it, the hospitals have it, that we come together and do it often enough so that it becomes a pattern that then symbolizes these things. Can you just pan up again to the Seed of Life garden above that design? Thank you. So this little pattern is where the whole thing came from, and if you take a compass and just draw a circle, and then put the center of your compass on the circumference of the circle and draw another circle, the pattern itself will lead you around to this design. And so that's a good place to start, period, is just get these gardens in. Okay, now let's pan down again, if you would, Robin. Thank you. Now, what I'm thinking, and maybe my next step is to contact the head of economic development. I know that Larry Burkhart just moved to Colorado, and we've got a new one. I'm not sure what his name is, unfortunately. But if we were to adopt that pattern as a community, what we could do, and again, like Lou was saying, if you have ideas about, you know, oh, straw bale would work great for this, or you could do it this way, maybe you haven't thought about that, please contact me. I'm interested. Or just take it on to your own drawing board and go from there. I don't need to be the center of this project. Go ahead.
But you are now. So let's just give you your website, seedoflifegarden.org. You can contact Kathy by phone at 530-478-9052, and email Kathy Irving, KATHYIRVING, at ncws.com. And it's important, you know, pass out the information. How can people contact you? I mean, you could email me at the show, but that would just put it one off. You might as well go right to the source.
I think that if we were to adopt it as something, it could be something that we could export from Nevada County. Not only could we export the concept, though if it's on TV, I suppose anybody can have it at this point, but I did copyright it. I mailed it to myself. But but just very quickly, I think artists could design windows that were appropriate for these structures, and then we could export them from Nevada County. What if the loft had an unusually shaped bed in it, and we got local craftsmen to build the beds or to make the natural fiber mattresses that were that shape, so that we were creating as much micro-industry here in Nevada County as we could to export, because that's how we bring funds in from outside of the county to here, to increase our baseline of how the workforce genre labor pool ends up increasing their standard of living. That part is really important, to be exporting goods.
It's amazing. You have some great ideas, Kath.
I've been working on these ideas for quite some time, and like I said, I spend so much time gardening that I'm out there for 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours straight by myself, looking at these patterns with thinking about solutions. I finally decided I'm not thinking about the problems anymore. I'm not even interested in them.
You've got all the solutions here, but we need to implement this stuff. Now, so who else would you need to be involved with to get something like this moving? Are you already plugged into all the various, like the Board of Education? I know you're involved. Terry knows you, right?
Yeah, Terry knows who I am. I would love to have him endorse the project and be able to send it out to other superintendents of schools as part of, to encourage them to integrate it into their wellness policy, so that as we're creating curriculum for this particular design, we can not have to reinvent the wheel over and over and over again. The other thing is that probably the next piece that I could really use help with is to have a contractor who could draw the building to spec, who could actually draw these units, something that was feasible to build, and I don't even know where to begin with that, to do an architectural drawing of it.
That's why I suggested Fred, or David Wright, or any of those fellows. We're almost out of time. Kathy, thanks again for coming on and talking about this. This is fabulous. And again, if anybody has any ideas or would like to be involved or even wants to be part of the Seed of Life Garden, you can contact Kathy, get the information we gave you. Thanks again for watching Reality Check, and have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time.
NCTV thanks the following underwriters for their very generous support. Williams Stationery. For 59 years, the Williams family has been providing our community a comprehensive full line of business and personal office supplies, social stationery, janitorial supplies, office furniture, and more. You can visit Williams Stationery in historic downtown Grass Valley, your headquarters for service.
In the event of a car crash, 3 out of 4 kids are not as secure as they should be because their car seats are not used correctly. But the latch system makes it easier to get it right and to hold your kids tight. Anchor, tether, latch. Learn more at safercar.gov.
Rosemary Matrailer, an experienced business and contract attorney, supporting the integrity of your business relationships.
A well-crafted contract is the foundation of every successful business relationship. I can help you put your agreement with others into words that will survive the test of time.
From Pacifica, this is